Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of Thoughts of Rambling Mind. This episode is about hip hop, gangs, gangsters, and the industry, right? Um, I just got a question for you. Did anybody else notice that since about the 90s, the music industry has seemed to be going right to the jails, right to the block, right to the gangs, and recruiting gang members, convicted killers, and all level of criminal to be part of the hip hop industry, to be the next big thing. Um, and in a way, you want them to go to these areas to find the talent. Number one, because that's where some of the best talent is, right? And you want them to go to these areas because the people in these areas don't often have the opportunities and the doors open for them, and their talent won't get a chance to show. Um, Also, in defense of the industry, a lot of the executives in the music industry come from humble beginnings, come from some of these neighborhoods and some of these situations. Whether they were active participants in the life or not, they observed it and they feel a kindred spirit to it. A lot of them. Okay, so let's put that out there and put that to the side because let's always be fair and be honest. However, the music industry is not run by our people and it's not run by the hood, by the ghettos at all. The people who might point the finger and choose the next rapper might be from the place, but the person who okays the next rapper and allows them to step forward to the public is not the person from the neighborhood. There's an entity above that. And my question to the I guess I can't ask the entity, but I'll just put this question out in the universe, right? If you have a multi-million dollar company, and when I say multi-million, we're talking about hundreds of millions to billion-dollar companies, right? A company that is attached to parent companies, conglomerate companies that are worth multiple billions of dollars, right? Why would you continually pursue an endeavor where death and destruction is the result, right? Well, in my experience, businesses, especially businesses of that large stature, make decisions based on their bottom line. Publicity is not an effect. Sometimes it seems like those who are not educated in the business world will feel like publicity and drawing attention to a cause actually makes companies change their course of action. But in reality, that's not true. It's the effect of the publicity, if negative, will make them change the course of action. And when I say if negative, I mean if their bottom line is affected. If the dollar signs are not affected by negative activity, then negative activity will continue. Um, in other words, when a rapper dies, their fan base goes out of their way to purchase their music, their memorabilia, and other marketing items uh, start going through the roof as far as funding is concerned, right? The music industry is um, is a conglomeration of a number of businesses, and every entity within this conglomerate is out for a dollar. But the question is, for the people in the situation, what do we do? Because it seems like we have a vicious cycle. I mean, we can't go to the least educated and the least provided for and the most restricted individuals in our society and ask them to turn down major bags, right? Major funding opportunities. We can't do that. If the industry goes to a prison and says to a prisoner, we're going to change your entire life and we're going to give you more money than you ever heard of, and we're going to give you enough money to take care of you, your family, and everyone in it, they're going to take that deal. And they're going to talk about what it is that they know to talk about. You see, the problem with most people thinking that the Illuminati or the powers that be or the man is out here making people do things and controlling people to do things, the problem is that your minds are far too simple on this problem. And my mind might be extremely simple on this issue because I don't have the kind of money and the power or wealth to truly grasp and understand the actions that those people do, right? However, I do know that those people, those powers that be, they don't make people do things directly. That would expose them too much to the light, right? In reality, they create situations in which people don't know that they're even assisting with the plan. In other words, for example, on 9/11, there were, I believe, 5 hijackers. I may be wrong about the number, but there were a number of hijackers. None of these hijackers knew who the other hijackers were. They were each an individual cell on that plane. Each individual person had a role to play out during the hijacking. You know, one person would grab a stewardess, one person would attack the pilot's door, one person would keep the crowd calm, one person would be speaking the instructions, one person would be flying the plane, you know, that kind of thing. And the plan was completely orchestrated individually, meaning that you wouldn't know what the other person's role was. All you would know was that when a cue occurred, that your part would begin. Meaning, you be sitting there, everything would be calm, somebody would jump up, grab a stewardess. People would start screaming, another person would jump up and start calming the crowd. Once the person jumps up and starts calming the crowd, you know it's your time, and your time is to go storm the pilot's door. While you're storming the pilot's door, all you're doing is trying to break down the door because that's your role. There's another person who you didn't know was coming, jumping over your back, sitting in the pilot's seat in the cockpit, flying the plane. That's the way the 9/11 hijacking was planned and conducted. The people who did the plan, who created the plan, is who I would call the powers that be. The only difference between that situation and this one is the people involved in the plan knew that the ultimate outcome was the hijacking of the plane. But they may or may not have known that they weren't going to get off that plane. They may or may not have known, most likely not, that that plane was going to fly into the Twin Towers. You know, only the pilot would have known that part. So again, just because you're part of a conspiracy doesn't mean that you know of the conspiracy. And just because you're part of a conspiracy doesn't mean that you were being instructed and hired as a arbitrator of that conspiracy. So let's keep going. We got the music industry bringing in the worst element of the black community and handing out millions to them. Well, what's the effect of that? If you have a street gang and one of the members of the street gang becomes a rapper and is blessed with hundreds of thousands of dollars instantly without the ability to mature into the wealth, without the ability to recognize the consequences of being careless with money, the first thing a street guy is going to do with the money is attend to his wants, needs, and lacks. Then he'll attend to his loved ones' wants, needs, and lacks. Depending on the structure of his family and how close they were to him, his loved ones will either be his family or they'll be his gang. If you have enough experience in the black community, enough experience with gangs of all races, then you're very familiar with the fact that the more serious gang members, the more active gang members, usually don't have a great relationship at home, right? So, in that case, where the industry is going for the worst of the worst that we know of right now, in that case, the people who are getting this money, 9 out of 10 are bringing the money back to their gang. And we know what gangs do with money. They fund gang warfare. They fund drug dealing in the hood. The music industry, the hip hop industry in particular, but I won't blame this on hip hop because hip hop doesn't make the money. Hip hop just generates it. Hip hop doesn't pay people. Hip hop just generates the wealth. So the music industry as a whole is perpetrating the largest crime on the streets in the hoods that we come from. The inner city, the urban youth are being slaughtered because they aspire to be rappers. They aspire to be the image of the gangster that the rappers promote. They aspire to have the wealth of the rappers and be the gangsters that the music industry has now started replicating over and over and over again. Go in a hood, take a grimy dude who's not doing that well for himself, drape him in jewelry and a steady income of cash, and release him back to his neighborhood. Gang mentality from Chicago. Chief Keef is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Chief Keef was a 15-year-old boy who had shootouts with cops, who was an active member of a Chicago gang, who was in his ultimate raw form at that age in the street, and he had nothing but a gang of young, ignorant hoodlums around him as well, right? How do I know that the music industry is a dirty place that only wants the worst of the worst in our communities to rise to the top? Well, because in Chief Keef's first video, there were so many guns you wouldn't believe that a 15-year-old would have access to. But not only were there so many guns you wouldn't believe that a 15-year-old had access to, but that 15-year-old was wearing an ankle monitor in the video. What does that mean? That means, number one, he's already been committing serious crimes and was under monitoring by the government because of it at 15 years old, right? What that also means is that a person under that type of surveillance should not have the large amount of weaponry that they have around them, because if you're under that form of surveillance, it means that you don't have the right to own a gun legally. What does it also mean? Being that that was his first music video, it means that the music industry thought that, number one, this was entertainment, and also that this would be entertaining for the masses. This would be suitable for the masses, and the masses would find this to be entertaining. What else did it mean? It meant that 15-year-old kids all across America would have a new role model. No more Soulja Boy, no more Lil Wayne. Chief Keef became the most influential artist of his generation. Chief Keef. Now, if you've watched hip hop throughout the years, then you know how influential a hip hop artist can be when they become the most influential of their generation. 50 Cent ended the career of the number one rapper in the world, Ja Rule. That's what he used his influence to do. Jay-Z ended throwback jerseys, auto-tune, Cristal liquor, Range Rover 4.0s, Nas's career. That's neither here nor there. Jay-Z single-handedly stopped all of those things. Cameron is the reason why black men feel comfortable wearing the color pink. Future is the reason why. No, not the reason why. We'll go back a little further from Future. Lil Wayne is the reason why there's an opioid epidemic in the black community, right? Future is the reason why taking opioids in the black community is not only accepted but glorified. So the influence of the hip hop community, Annie Up birthed a whole era of stick up kids and robbers in Brooklyn. MOP did that. Wu-Tang Clan, I don't think the Nation of the God Bodies and Earth would be what they are today if not for the Wu-Tang Clan. The influence of rappers is far greater. It far exceeds any other genre of entertainment, any other form of music in the black community. And in the world, honestly. The entire world has been changed by hip-hop and continues to be changed by hip-hop. So, as black people, we have to be careful. We have to be careful of what we allow out in the media. And we can't let the music industry dictate what it is that we find entertaining, right? I was taught that the Bible says if you train up a child in a way he should go, he'll never depart from it, right? And in raising my children, I always kept that in mind. I always said that you don't tell a child what not to do, what not to play with. Because once a child determines that something is fun and something is entertaining, then they're either going to do it in front of you and you're going to be okay with it, you're going to help them, guide them through it, or they're going to do it behind your back because they don't want you to know, because maybe your reaction is not the most positive towards whatever that thing is. My method with my children was always to trick them into thinking that the positive things were the fun things to do. Reading books in my house was like a fun pastime. We used to gather everybody and we used to all get together and read. Playing chess was a pastime, Not being slack and whorish was a pastime. We used to take pride in that. We used to celebrate that kind of thing, And unfortunately with my son, I taught him that being gangster was a pastime. I wish that I hadn't told him that, but it's what I knew at the time. And so even in my life, I've perpetuated the same falsehoods onto the next generation. And now I'm working hard to undo that in my child's life as well as in the lives of others. So again, the music industry is slaughtering black people. The music industry is causing the slaughter of countless black people. I'm watching all the elder statements in hip hop, the older people in hip hop, the older rappers, and I'm watching them all change their lives over. And I commend that, and I believe that every person has a right to change. Every person has a right to be wrong, and every person has a right to grow. I know for sure I have. You know, I've not been the same person that I was growing up. My only issue is that you weren't always this person, and the person you were before was teaching us, including myself, to be this person that we all know now is not the right person to be. You were young when you taught us this, so I can't hold you accountable. But you know who wasn't young? You know who did know better? The music industry. The people who signed you. The people who allowed you to put forth this filth and this trickery into the public. The people who allowed you to take our youth for generation after generation and send them on a direct express ticket to the prisons and to the graveyards, right? The music industry is doing this to our children. And we, the consumer, are feeding the excuses for why they're able to do it. We should no longer purchase music promoting and glorifying the destruction of our own people. We should no longer be party to people who like vultures eat off of our dead society. They sign our rappers, they give them rape deals, robbery deals, and then when the rapper dies from the thing that they're allowing him to promote, then they rake in all of the money in the back end. Making money has hand over fist, and it's a very dirty game. It's some of the most horrible things that you'll see. If you want to talk about genocide, let's talk about the death of the rapper in 2020, 2021, 2019. Let's talk about how hip-hop has become the most dangerous career field to be in, and how one of the only fields that can take a black man out of the misery of the neighborhood that we come from has become the neighborhood that we've come from. I don't understand how the streets have moved. The streets are moving. The streets are alive. When they say the streets are dead, I no longer believe that. The streets are not dead. You see, the problem is the streets is not your address. The streets is not a block that you live on. The streets, right? What are the streets? The streets is an idea. It's a mentality. It's a way of life. And the streets are wherever street people are at. The music industry is where the streets have moved to. The music industry is where the streets are at right now. The streets have left the blocks because the blocks are destroyed. What's happening on the block is not the streets. What's happening on the block is hell. Hell is on the block, and the streets are in the music industry. So where are the guys in hell gonna go to get out of the fucking place that they in? They're gonna go from hell to the streets and get killed in the streets. And that's why all of these rappers are dying, because they're getting killed in the streets. Hip-hop are the new streets, and the streets is the new hell. Those are my thoughts of a rambling mind. Like, share, subscribe. I know it's a long video, but I'm out.